Hi, my name is Cintya Esmeralda Segoviano Piedra. I am from Vicente Guerrero, Durango, Mexico, and I am currently also the Director for Administration for the Fort Worth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I don't think that my story in itself is very significant. If nothing more, I'm incredibly grateful that someone thinks that it may be able to bring some value to maybe people who are experiencing similar situations than I did. So me and my family moved to Manchester, New Hampshire, thanks to the 1989 amnesty presented by President Bush. We had come to this country with hopes and dreams and the belief of this new world that, was safe and where anything that you aspired to become, you'd become it, and something that I still firmly believe. However, that was very shattered when playing outside with my sister, a man just drove up and decided that he'd pick up a child, and that was me. So had my sister not started screaming and yelling, nobody would have been aware because I froze. I was frozen and he was able to put me in his car, and my sister wasn't. She grabbed onto a side mirror and started screaming, and with her doing that, the neighbors ran out, my father, my parents ran out, and my grandmother who was visiting us from Mexico ran out. And he was still able to drive away with me, but he had been witnessed, and it changed the entire situation. And eventually he just dropped me off somewhere down the road in our town. By this point, the Manchester, New Hampshire Police Department was aware that there was an abducted child and there was a search going underway. By the time that I was found, I was walking in the street. I remember being really cold, maybe wet. I think it might have been raining or not really sure. I just remember being really cold. There was an officer who found me walking on the road and just stayed behind and watched me, but nonetheless he followed me, and once my father arrived, waited for my father to arrive, and once my father arrived, then I ran to him, and it was like I was safe again, and it was probably one of the most wonderful feelings in the world. From that situation, though, I believe began a lot of other difficulties for our family. My father picked up drinking very heavily, and also drug usage, and my mother decided that we were no longer safe in that area. So with her having some family in Fort Worth, Texas, she decided that it would be best for us to immediately be sent over to Fort Worth. So right then and there, everything we had planned, all our hopes, all our dreams were completely dismantled, and we had to change course. So we were sent to Fort Worth to stay with my mother's sister while my parents stayed behind to tie up loose ends. And that just began a whole nother set of difficulties. When we first came from New Hampshire, my sisters and I stayed at the duplex with my aunt and uncle at the duplex in front of the blue truck. Somehow I found myself at the age of 16 at the lowest of my low, I suppose. I had to come knocking to the door of an emergency night shelter for women and children, and I said I need a place to stay. They said we have no beds. So I don't care. I need a place to sleep. It's cold. It's raining. I have a baby with me, and I'm pregnant, so I need help. The lady let me in, thankfully, and said, well, here's a mat. And she gave me one of those small blue mats that we roll out for gym. And she said, you can sleep in the library. And I set the mat down. And I remember that night holding my daughter and crying for the first time in what seemed forever. And despite the difficulties that I had gone through already, or the challenges or any of the things that I'd encountered, holding her there that night, I was overpowered by sadness, and I felt this sense of hopelessness and true pain, because it wasn't pain for me, it was pain for the baby that I was holding. first night I came here, it was raining outside, and so it was actually really awesome that I did find a place to go sleep at night. So even though I had to stay on a mat in the library floor, it was still a roof over my head and I could hear the rain, and I knew I was grateful because at least I was inside now. And it's something that I think a lot of us now take for granted, but when you're there, you start to it really humbles you down to truly understand what you should be grateful for versus what we complain about. Really definitely do feel that while opportunity favors prepared minds, I was very, very much blessed to run into the right opportunities and into the most amazing human beings that are the reason that I sit here. One of them who happened to have the same name as my daughter. There was in North Fort Worth, Northwest 31st Street, there was a house that was 3 stories, and at the top there was an attic. So that door had a rent sign on it, and it had a phone number, and the owner at that time, her name happened to be the same as my daughter, so she said, I told her I'd come back when I have money to pay her, but she said, here's the key, just stay and pay me as you can, and there was still the opportunity to do better. So now we had a place to sleep, we had running water and electricity, and it wasn't the grandest thing, and it wasn't in the best neighborhood, and it was definitely, nonetheless, it was the most amazing feeling to have a place of your own to rest your head. And so I decided, okay, next step, I need to go back to school. I mean, I can't educate these babies on a 9th grade dropped out education. 9th grade, I knew that the next step was school, a car, a phone. And so I was very, very lucky that my cousin had gone to Fort Worth Can Academy, and she had shared with me about how it was really a place that allowed her to finish school since she wasn't a traditional student. She was working, she was married, she needed something different. So I was very lucky that there was actually one down the road. So I was on 31st Street, and there was a Fort Worth Can Academy in River Oaks. And so, of course, I went and enrolled, and it was amazing because here there was a school that solved many of my issues, right? Which was I didn't have a car. Well, wonderful. Fort Worth Can Academy offered me a bus that would pick me up at my front door and would drop me off at my front door. That's perfect. So there was no excuse for me not to go to school anymore. And then another thing, I needed to work. I had 2 babies to feed, and so it allowed me to go to school after I went to work. Fort Worth Can Academy, aside from making it impossible to have excuses for not going to school, it introduced me to just the right people who didn't really do much, but they literally did do a lot by broadening my understanding of the world and broadening my interests. The Fort Worth Can Academy gives you the tools, but you still have to be the one to run with them. You still have to be the one to do the work. Nonetheless, I think its organization definitely simplifies and helps you eliminate excuses for not going to school. And that right there is one of the best things that Fort Worth Can Academy does for students. I think that at the very end of the day, everything that you experience is only a lesson, and that there's so much more that I will have to learn. And I hope that if anything at all comes out of me sharing my story with you today, it is that you are again reminded that your life is your responsibility, and that whatever you decide, you will become. I am a very, very happy and proud past student at Fort Worth Can Academy.